Hey everybody, welcome back to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thank you guys for tuning in. We ask that wherever you listen to us, subscribe, leave a comment and a review. Helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into this topic. Today we're talking about the long game and with repetition, rhythm, and staying aligned with your goals. One of the things we want to bring to your attention is, success isn't built overnight. It's earned through small, consistent actions. So in this episode, we're going to dive into some of the alignment tools and, reflection and help us to, accomplish that. So with that, I want to bring on our co-host, Joseph. Say what's up, Joseph, and take it away, bro.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Yeah, so I'll just kick off with our first topic, which is repetition to see payoffs. Because you're not going to see any gains in the gym or even improvement in whatever skill that you're trying to achieve or improve on if you don't repetitiously or continuously work on that one skill or do that one thing.
No, definitely, and it does have payoffs. It's not easy, but you got to put those reps in. You want to build those muscles up, whatever muscle it is, whether it's a physical muscle or emotional, mental, all these take time. So you have to build up those reps, to see the payoffs.
Yeah, really. And, it's one thing to do something a couple times a week, but it's a whole different story if you're doing it once a day, every day.
Yeah, consistency, right? That's what we've been harping on for the last few episodes. We're talking about, getting that clarity, staying focused and stuff like that. So you can see those gains, you definitely, and, create those achievements.
Yeah, definitely. And even though you may be doing it every day, understand that you won't see your daily payoffs, but you'll definitely see your quarterly gains or your quarterly achievements, right? If you're trying to be 10% better every quarter or whatever metric you want to use, then you'll really see the payoff. It's more the macro versus the micro, right? If you're gaining weight, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize I lost 10 pounds in a month. It's because it's a very gradual decrease. Or maybe even if you're at the gym and you're like, hey, I could lift 20 pounds heavier this week, right? So it's not something that you notice every day. It's not like, you go to the gym for 3 days and then on the fourth day, you're like, damn, I could really lift 1.25 pounds more. It's more so, it's a more gradual macro change.
Right. No, definitely. And the first step is starting, right? So, and then once you get going, you start getting into this rhythm, and you start improving daily, and you get stronger in whatever it is you're building those reps in.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really about getting into a rhythm, right? Whenever you're running, people always say, get into the rhythm of your feet, right? Or the sound that your feet make, because that will keep you going. Even if you're starting to fade with your stamina, if your stamina is starting to fade, they say, hey, just listen to the rhythm of your feet, the shuffle of your feet. Because, again, once you start to just zone out and get into a rhythm and let it flow, then you're able to keep on continuing with the reps. Or even if you're trying to, do so I lift light, but I lift a lot, right? So I might lift lighter than most people or so, whatever the case may be, but I'll do that rep, or I'll do a lot of reps within a set.
Right. And it's not how much, weight you add to it or how much you do, because it all compounds, so every little part that you contribute, every time you get into that rhythm, every time you do, even if you did just a set of 10, that's 10 more than you done yesterday. So always getting into a rhythm is important, because that's going to help you stay consistent.
Yeah, definitely. And, just being able to focus daily on that one thing, or trying to improve on one task per day, right? So You're not like, hey, I'm going to try to improve 5 different things. No, you try to improve 1 to 2 things. It could be 3 things, but it could be one thing in each of your goals, right? There's a wealth goal, there's a relationship goal, and then like a personal goal, right? So maybe it's like, hey, I want to achieve X amount of dollars per month this year, or I want to make this much money this year, right? So you're like, hey, let me earn this much this month to get to that goal, or hey, I want to lose X amount of pounds this year. So it's like, okay, how many pounds of weight, or how many pounds do I want to lose this month, right? So it's all about being hyper focused on what you're trying to improve or focus on.
Right. And it's not only the gains, like we're talking about, like working out to get stronger, or, whatever our tactic is to lose weight, but it's also the other things too, that the things that we have to stop that are holding us back, So, like if we're like me, sometimes I go to the market and I catch myself grabbing some Hostess, and I'm like, man, I shouldn't be doing this, but it's like, all right, cool. But then I catch myself, I'm like, oh man, I got to change this up. So got to change the rhythm up, you know what I mean? In order to see those payoffs, I bring that out because it's important that every day you have to make these conscious choices, whether you're going to do it or you're not.
Yeah, that's a great point. The even like Henry just said, right? We're talking about the adding, but there's also the subtracting element, right? So, let's say you're like, hey, I need to lose weight, so I need to be on a calorie deficit, right? So, even a big part of that is, hey, how many sodas did I not drink this month, right? Or how many sodas did I not drink this month, or this week rather? That's like a big thing that a lot of people say is like, I dropped 30 pounds just from stopping, or just from not drinking soda
True.
as much as I used to. And so even the little things, or what may seem little, removing a soda or two per week or whatever, that will compound, right? Because then you won't be craving it as much. You won't be like, hey, I normally drink 3 cans of soda a day. I know people that drink 5 a day.
Right. Yeah, no,
So,
definitely. And it's super easy to fall into that, bro. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you're right, guys. So, there's got to be a balance, you know what I mean? But the most important thing that we're trying to bring about is that the repetition, putting the reps in, you got to do this on a consistent basis, daily, to see the payoffs.
yeah, and like that one Bruce Lee quote, right? He fears a man that has practiced one punch 10,000 times, instead of a man who has practiced 10,000 punches one time.
Yeah, very true, bro. Very, very true. And sometimes we do get caught up in that. Again, we're creatures of habit, so once we get in our habits, we just kind of like form that, and then it forms us, and then, and take this from me. I've been around a few decades, so I've learned a lot of things. And one of the things is when it's not serving you, you have to get rid of it, and you have to put in that effort, and it's the repetition, it comes back to that. So it's a universal law. You reap what you sow. So, you got to plant better seeds, and this is a good point that you made, fear the man who, mastered one punch, rather than the one that's throwing 10,000 random punches, So what that means is don't just throw things out there and think everything's going to work. It's like, no, get focus, clarity, all the things we've been talking about, and putting it into repetition so you can say the payoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And if you even want to think about it as like a building, right? We've used this analogy before, building it brick by brick. You're not going to create a building if you lay out 10 bricks amongst 10 different buildings, right? You have to lay down 10,000 bricks into one building for it to become a building. And even a skyscraper, right? A skyscraper, that's a whole lot of effort put into one building. So just use that as an analogy to carry you forward.
That's a good analogy, bro. And the most important thing whenever you're building anything is the foundation. So if the foundation isn't good, the structure is not going to be good. So the foundation in our lives is, the habits and the practices and the things that we do on a daily, because when you start building and things start going good, if the foundation isn't right, and what I mean by foundations, we're talking about the mental, the physical, the emotional, the relational, the social, all those things come into place. So when you look at things, you put that into context and you start to focus and see what's, really good. So that's what we were talking about, like getting in the rhythm and improving daily, in a particular skill, subject, whatever it is, we know what we have to deal with, right? So again, like Joseph just said, practicing that one punch, so whether it's a relationship, whether it's your mindset, whether it's whatever habit, good or bad, we have to put in those reps. So.
Yeah, definitely. And what you just said really carries us into our next topic, which is being in tune with what you're trying to achieve, right? That's one of the foundations that Henry just said, right? If you don't have your foundation right, the house may be shaky, or whatever analogy you want to give, but being in tune with what you're trying to achieve, right? Knowing, hey, this is what I'm aiming for, and this is why I want to aim for it.
Yeah, very true, bro. Yeah, you don't want to build your house on sand, right? You want to build it on a solid foundation. You want to have, that to serve you, so to speak. So.
Yeah, really. And Napoleon Hill says it, right? Like, have a definite chief aim, or in other words, have a northern star, or know what you're trying to aim for, right? And so if you don't know what you're trying to aim for, you're going to be off in 8 different directions. You're going to be in one direction one day, another direction the next day, maybe even a completely different direction next week.
And there's another saying out there, don't know who said it, but I'm going to quote it anyways. He who fails to plan, plans to fail. So it's very important that you do get it down, get focused, get that clarity. That's the same thing we've been talking about, is just, getting focused. That's important. So I think Napoleon Hill is saying that, having that North Star, like it's a map to know where you're going.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And Earl Nightingale talked about that as well, right? If you're in a plane or a boat, and the pilot or the captain doesn't know where they're trying to end up, that plane and that boat is going to be in some random spot, right? That's how Christopher Columbus stumbled upon America. He thought he was going to India, but he found America. Well, he didn't find it, but he stumbled upon America.
And that's what it is, bro. And it's like there's a saying, if like the GPS is even off by 1 degree, if you don't have a map, you wouldn't know, right? So you just keep going and going, and you end up somewhere. But is it the destination that you put in? So it's important, like, to have that map, to have that plan, in place.
Yeah, really, and that segues us perfectly into the next point, which is knowing when you're deviating from that plan. Know when your GPS is 1 degree off, because once you have a chief aim, then you can be like, hey, I'm trying to drop 20 pounds this year, right? Or even if you want to shoot for something higher, but something, if you want to be quote unquote realistic or something light, I know a lot of people can struggle with more, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds, right? That could mean a lot for people. So let's just say 20 pounds, right? So, hey, I want to drop 20 pounds this year, but you're ordering out a lot. You're drinking a lot of soda, maybe even more soda than normal, right? So then if you're trying to do that, if you're trying to achieve the lose 20 pounds, but you're deviating by drinking a lot of soda, eating out extra meals, all of that will add up, and you're like, hey, I'm deviating from my plan.
Right. And it's not only the food consumption, but on the other end too, it's affecting your financial situation too, because depending where you're at, so if you're struggling with finances and you find yourself doing all these other things, it's like, okay, well, let me put a goal and a plan in place. For not saying stop doing these things, but it's like, let me be a little more strategic, so I know what's going where, and you can track it. So, yeah, the sodas, the food, all that kind of stuff, it kind of goes against your plan to lose weight, if that's the case that you're doing, so it's important that you just stick to the goal and to the plan. And trust me, it's not easy. I've set many of them, and I'm like, oh man, didn't accomplish it, but in some sense, I go back and I don't chastise myself. I don't punish myself. I'm just like, okay, cool. Let me just pick up from here. Like there's that, I don't know if you're familiar with that 75 hard. That's
Yes.
something that they put out there to try to inspire people, and it's tough, and the main challenge in that is you go 75 days hard. If you fall off even one day, you start over from the beginning. So sometimes it's a little discouraging, but it's also encouraging because it motivates you to stay focused and, get that clarity and put in those reps. So definitely important.
Yeah, really. And just being honest with yourself, right? That's why I kind of titled this topic or introduced this topic as being in tune, right? You have to really be in tune with yourself. And sometimes you have to tell yourself the ugly truth, right? Like, hey, I'm not sticking to my commitment. And, that's a hard talk that you have to have with yourself. It's a hard talk I've had with myself a couple times this year already,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm trying to achieve certain things this year. And, there have been weeks where I'm like, hey, I'm not doing what I need to. I'm just stagnating. I had a friend, I had a conversation with a friend 2 weeks ago, and he called me out on it. And so, just being in tune with what you're trying to achieve.
That's good. The accountability is important. So when you got people in your life that you allow to speak into your life and to check in on you, that's a good thing, guys. It's important that we take that journey serious, and that because once you put it out there, it's like, you got to fulfill it for yourself, so that way you can see like, okay, I'm achieving, I'm making progress, I'm moving forward. Again, being that person that's, practicing that one punch 10,000 times, you're going to get stronger, after a while, you're going to start to see that, okay, I could achieve this,
Yeah, really. And just taking the journey seriously, like Henry just said, right? And don't take it for granted. A lot of people, they only want the end result, but it's all about the journey. Everyone will tell you that, right? Life is a journey. Life is there's a thought leader, Alan Watts. I've mentioned him a couple times, but he talks about, life is like a musical or like a play. If life were not like a play, you listen to a play or a musical because of the nuance of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, every song would just be two notes because you're trying to get to the end of the song. You want the whole song to play out. You want the whole play to play out. You want the beauty of life to play out. Otherwise, everyone would just be like, okay, I'm 5 years old. Okay, we're good. Right. So just take the journey seriously and know that if you do take it seriously, then you'll actually achieve things.
Definitely. And there's different parts in life, like you just made that reference about music. It's like in music, you're right. It's not just two notes to get it over. They have, the intro, the chorus, the break, that they have the verses and then the outros and stuff like that. Cause it's a journey. They want to take you on the journey. So ask yourself, what journey am I creating right now for myself? Where am I at? You know what I mean? Do I need to fix these things? Do I need to increase things or decrease things, building that repetition, to see the payoffs, am I in tune with what I'm trying to achieve? So, take this stuff that we're sharing with you guys, and enjoy the journey, but don't take it for granted.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there's a phrase that everyone knows, stop and smell the roses, just appreciate the small things, appreciate the little steps they are on. Another quote by Alan Watts is like, or a concept by Alan Watts is, appreciating, like if you're on a hill, if you're hiking on a hill, thank the hill because the hill is what's taking you up there, so the journey is what's taking you up there. But also that brings us into our next topic, which is reflecting on things that you've accomplished, right? Like, let's say you are on a journey and you reach a goalpost, right? You're on a hike and you've reached a checkpoint. Thank the journey that you've on. Be appreciative of the journey that you've been on and all of the achievements that you've had.
True, true. Yeah. And that comes back to what we were talking about before, just celebrating your wins, whether they're little, big, celebrate them. Reflect back on the accomplishments. Sometimes when you accomplish something great, and then it's always the simplest little thing that kind of sets us back, like it's like, wait a minute, you just overcame this big mountain and, these little things, but it's because you don't celebrate your wins, so the little defeats come in and try to creep up. So this comes back again to the repetition. When you reflect on the things you accomplish, you can say, hey, I've already put that in. I know how to do this, and I can overcome this,
Exactly. And I tell myself this phrase a lot. If I've done it once, I could do it again, right? And so let's say you're on a journey and like Henry just said, you came over a big mountain, but there's like, some small little problem or a problem came up, and then you're like, man, this is gonna take me back so far, blah 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 blah. But you've already come so far. You've already done so much. So celebrate how far you've come. And kind of going back to what we were saying in a previous podcast, adversity is a privilege, right? Not everyone is going to walk down the same path as you. Not everyone, I don't think anyone is going to walk down the same path as you, right? So just being able to have adversity tells you, hey, I'm doing the right thing and I'm continuing to move on with things, right? I'm challenging myself. I'm becoming better.
And that's the thing, right? Every day you're going to have struggles, so, but even in that day, there's some wins. So celebrate the wins, guys. That's our encouragement to you. Celebrate the wins. That's going to keep you motivated and keep you inspired and keep you moving,
Yeah, really. And here's another thing that it's a big reason why a community is so helpful and so important is you can ask others for your blind spots, right? Sometimes we can't see what we're missing.
Very true. And trust me, there's a lot of people out there that are happy to show you your blind spots.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, but take it with a grain of salt, don't get offended by it. Just understand that, like, some people are going to, say negative stuff, but there is some constructive criticism even in that. And you can use that, to help you to get in tune and, stay aligned with your goal and your plan. And you'll see it because sometimes you don't see it. You're right, bro. There is blind spots in everybody's life. And, we're so busy and focused with our journey that sometimes we don't see, the little shortcomings.
Exactly. Or even we might have a whole process. We might have a whole system at play, but we didn't take into consideration one factor, right? So we're not all perfect. We're not all all seeing, right? So we will have some blind spots, and the more blind spots that we eliminate, the stronger and better we will be. And sometimes a third party, a third person, someone outside of ourselves can be like, hey, bro, your shoes are untied,
Yeah. Metaphorically speaking, it's like you're going to trip yourself up, right? So it's like, you take that and you look at it, you could take it two ways, right? You can get offended by it or you can get better by it, so take the second route, get better by it, but don't be afraid to ask others. You're right, Joseph, being a part of a community does help, because sometimes some people might not have that person to like, well, who do I go ask? Who do I talk to? Everybody that I know, they, is just family. And sometimes you want different, answers rather than a bias answer, right? So a community is going to help you to get that, or a friend or, associates, whoever you can find, but definitely seek that out,
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of plays into our next topic, which is finding things to motivate yourself and trying to be inspired or like keeping yourself in an inspired mood, right? Obviously, It's not going to be every day, but whenever I personally see that my inspiration and my motivation is starting to wane, or I'm starting to like lose steam, I start looking for something to motivate me. I look for something that like gets that fire up and going again.
Yeah, true, bro. I mean, for me, it was a long time. I mean, I was always dedicated into just working, right? Like we grind, and everything is good, making money hand over fist. Like that wasn't the problem, right? Everything was pretty good relationally and stuff like that. So I always had that because the foundation has been set, right? But there was other areas where I wasn't doing things, for myself. So the motivation started to deteriorate, and like I shared before, years back, it was just I hit fatigue, burnout. I didn't want to do anything, and it took me a few years to recover. But one of the things that I ended up doing, and that's really been a great help, finding things that inspire me, is I took up golf. I know a lot of you guys are laughing like, ah, that's such a boring sport. It's not even a sport, you just sit around hitting a little stationary ball, but it's the game of golf is very strategic. It's like playing chess, so it's every move, so you only, if you're on a par five, then you have 5 hits to get it in the hole. So every move counts, every if you fluff the ball on the first one, then your chances just became harder. So, and it's not only that, it's the motivation of the other guys that are there, inspiring or clowning, right? But it still feels good. So it's just, that's what inspires me and keeps me going and gives me that balance, a little something for myself to do. I'm out in the nature, having a good time, communication, fellowship, and stuff like that with, different people and stuff. And you get motivated and inspired off their stories as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that right there is a community, right? That's the power of community. And let's say, I know nothing about golf. All I know is mini golf. That's the only golf I know. But but even then, right? Find something that a new thing to motivate you, right? A new endeavor to motivate you. Not saying that you need to take up a sport or something as big as that, but even, hey, I've been curious about knitting. I've been curious about this new recipe on how to cook a new style, right? Just whatever creative expression that you want, to get that creative expression out there, right? Me personally, the more creative I am, the more motivated I am, because us as humans, we're made to create things. We're made to be creators of things, right? So whenever I'm not, even something as simple as making food, right? If I'm not making food, I that's probably a good sign that I'm not feeling motivated right now. But if you're like, hey, I want to cook this new dessert, or I want to cook this new thing, right? Something as simple as that will lift up your mood sometimes, because it's like, hey, I tried something new. What else can I try new, right? So that will get you motivated.
Yeah, for sure, bro. Yeah, and just understand, guys, it's the long game, right? Um, Success isn't built overnight. It's earned through the small, consistent actions, and those actions are the repetitions. So you can see the payoffs, being in tune with what you're trying to achieve, like Napoleon Hill said, having that North Star, so you know what you're aiming for, and putting that plan in place. Reflecting on the things you have accomplished, celebrate those wins, those challenges that you've overcome, and keep going, man, keep pushing, keep listening to podcasts like this, and, it's going to help you to grow and to get to that next level. And with that, I want to ask Joseph if he has any closing thoughts, upon, ending this podcast.
Yeah, really, I just really want to say, I really want to focus on the reflecting on what you've accomplished, right? Just celebrating your wins. That's like the big thing that I really want to impart on people, is be a positive force for yourself. Again, we talked about that previously, but just, again, don't be hard on yourself. Let yourself know, hey, I'm doing a good job.
Right on. Well said, bro. All right, guys. Well, with that, this concludes this show for today. We want to thank you for listening to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. Stay blessed.
Bye-bye.